Shabbat Shalom. But first I want to say that my words of Torah are incredibly in gratitude and indebted to the words of Rick Landman and the words of Regina Linder for sharing the stories of their families and ancestors. Really, thank you very, very much. And all that I'm saying is it's with your, imbued with what you had to say. And I'm just really honored to offer some words here tonight. So I have been thinking a lot about home, about what it means to feel at home somewhere. I've been in New York now for about 3 months. It actually feels like a lot longer. And I'm constantly checking in with myself. Do I feel at home here yet? Am I allowed to call myself a New Yorker? Will I ever be allowed to call myself a New Yorker? Do I even feel like a New Yorker? I have begun to ignore people as I walk with purpose to the subway. So does that count? And I have begun to appreciate that the weather here is consistently 10 degrees warmer than the weather in Boston, which I also think counts. And I've even started to root for the Jets on Sundays, which I think really counts, right? I didn't say baseball because I didn't want to cause any world wars around here. However, there's a deeper feeling of being at home that this week and this Shabbat is bringing up for me. And that's the feeling of being at home in this country as a Jew. These past few weeks have seen Ye, the artist formerly known as Kanye West, declare that he is going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. Ye has 31.8 million followers on Twitter, which is more than double the amount of Jews that are in the world right now. He has gone on a rampage the last few weeks, spewing anti-Semitic hatred, and said outright in an interview, "I can say anti-Semitic things, and Adidas, company with which he has a partnership with, can't drop me." Adidas did finally drop him after more than a week of silence. And although they did make a press statement that they do not tolerate anti-Semitism or hate speech, I have not seen a single post on their social media accounts that denounces him or anti-Semitism as a whole. I know that there has been some conversation around this topic, around Kanye's mental health. And to that I want to say, number one, yes, we do need better mental health care in the country as a whole. And number two, it's my personal belief that a mental health crisis does not cause hate speech, does not cause anti-Semitism. Last Monday, a banner hung over the 405 in Los Angeles that said, "Kanye is right about the Jews." And this past week was also the 4th anniversary of the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh on October 28th. Jews of the multiple different congregations who worshiped at the Tree of Life entered the synagogue on that Saturday morning, ready to pray and to learn Torah, as they did every week. And instead, they became the victims of an anti-Semitic, white supremacy-fueled attack. 11 Jews were killed, 5 wounded, just for being Jewish. 11 community members, doctors, parents, teachers, friends. I'm not sharing this because it's something that I want to talk about. I'm sharing it because I want to ground us in the reality of what's happening right now and what has been happening and rising over these past 4 since the Tree of Life, and really more likely these past 6 years. Often, what shocks me most when I read stories about Kristallnacht and the Holocaust and pogroms is how out in the open the anti-Semitism was able to be, how acceptable it was to say, "You hated Jews," and how far that feels from the reality that I grew up in my small and sheltered suburb. And yet then I think about that banner hanging over the 405, or about one of the largest performers of our generation saying loudly, proudly, that he's an anti-Semite. And it begins to feel less far away than it did before. It begins to feel a lot like we're seeing the hate speech turn into violence in this moment. We're seeing what can happen in a world where anti-Semitism is not condemned, but instead given fertile ground to breed on. In the New York Times today, actually November 4th, today, there is an article about the anti-Semitism that's rising in New York City. And there was a story at the beginning of the article about a rabbi who was the victim, Rabbi Taylor, a victim of anti-Semitic rhetoric. And he said he's never seen anything like this before. And this is his quote. He's worried about the fact that this is due to Kanye West. He said, "All it takes is a couple influential people to say things, and suddenly it becomes very tense." Lecha, this week's parsha, has had many translations throughout the years. Go forth, Lech Lecha, go towards yourself. Go for you, or you shall surely go. But for many years, the predominant translation of Lech Lecha was, get thee gone. The commandment to Abraham, get thee gone from here, from the place you have always known, from your homeland, from the place you once considered yours, get out. Takes on a different tenor when we look at it on the anniversary of Kristallnacht, doesn't it? In fact, in August 1938, in the lead up to Kristallnacht, Poland stated that it was going to renounce the citizenship of Polish Jews living abroad for at least 5 years after the end of October. And Germany, at the same time, was also forcing them to leave, ensuring that they were stateless. On the 28th of October in 1938, those Jews were ordered to leave their homes in a single night and were allowed to only take one suitcase per person to carry all of their belongings. As they were taken away, their remaining possessions were seized as loot by both Nazi authorities and by their neighbors. Get thee gone. Jews have had a long history of being told to Lech Lecha against their will. Shalom Aleichem, the Yiddish writer and humorist, wrote of exactly this in his stories of Tevye the Dairyman. The 9th chapter in his collection is called Get Thee Gone, and is really Shalom Aleicham's drash via Tevye on this parsha of Lech Lecha, through the eyes of someone being told to leave their homeland amidst violence and pogroms. He published the story in 1914, the same year he came to New York. The story details Tevye, a popular figure who we all know, coming back to his home and interacting with the constable and the local authorities there, who tell him, we're here to beat you up. We're here to tell you it's time to go. We're going to give you 3 days because we know you, you're one of our neighbors, but you have to go. You have to get out of here. He tells the story humorously, and I really do encourage you to read it. And if you're not in Rabbi James's class on Yiddish literature, I also encourage you to take her wonderful class where she's speaking about Shalom Aleichem, amongst others. But this is what he says when he hears this news and he tells his daughter, Tzeitel, who he's living with. She's become a widow at this point in the story. He tells her to get everything all taken care of, and he's going to go take care of the house. And when he comes back, this is what he says. I came home to find not a house, but a wreck. The poor walls bare as if they were shedding tears for all that was happening to them. On the floor were piles, bundles everywhere. On the hearth, the cat perched, sorrowful as an orphan. My heart almost broke, and tears sprang to my eyes. Had I not been embarrassed before my daughter, I would have had a good cry. Here was where I had grown up. Here I had struggled all my life, and suddenly, Lech Lecha, get thee gone. Say what you will, it's a terrible loss. We have been leaving our homelands and making new ones for a very long time. There's a midrashic tradition of Abraham going through 10 trials in order to become the forefather of the Jewish people. One of the trials is when Sarah, his wife, is captured by Pharaoh. One is Sodom and Amorah, and one is the binding of Isaac. The others are a little less known, but the Midrash tells us that Abraham's third trial was his migration from the house of his father, because the Midrash says, migration is harder for humans than it is for any other creature. Migration is harder for humans than it is for any other creature. And how do we know this? Because it says, Lech Lecha. Get thee out. We know that this is not an easy task. Making yourself a home somewhere new is a trial. It's not an easy thing. To become of a place, of a new place, to root for a new sports team, to find a new regular coffee shop, to shop at a new market, to make friends with new neighbors, it's not an easy task. I'm reminded of Psalm 137, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept as we thought of Zion. Zion being our homeland in the psalm. And there our captors asked us to sing a song for their amusement. But how can we sing one of our songs, a song of our people, in a strange land? How do we feel at home when antisemitism is rising everywhere? When hate speech is becoming more bold-faced every day, and not just bold-faced, but actually becoming real threats and real violence. When it no longer seems taboo for right-wing leaders to spread conspiracy theories about Jews, LGBTQ people, Black people, immigrants, these things are all connected. And for the media to treat it not as abominable, but as normal. How do we actually take on the trial? And instead of getting ourselves gone, decide to do the opposite and to surely and defiantly stay. I'm being honest, and I'm saying I'm scared right now. Right now feels frightening. I have mostly been able to live in a world that has been relatively sheltered from a lot of what I'm speaking about tonight. I've been very lucky in my life to not know anti-Semitism. And I know that's not true for everybody in this room, but it thankfully was true for me. But right now, going into this election, feeling the very real hold that white supremacy has been allowed to take in this country, I am more scared than I've ever been before. And I'm not just saying that. I wish I could say that it's all going to be okay. It's what I want to say. But instead, I only have solidarity. I am also feeling scared. I am also nervous about Tuesday night, about next year, about 2024. If you're fearful, all I can offer is that I am here with you in your fear. So instead of answers, I just want to offer two things. The first is we must vote. Thank you to Rick for sharing that at the beginning of the service. November 8th is election day, so go get yourselves out there. Lecha. We must use the power that we have to put leaders in place at every single level of the democratic system, who believe in fighting for the rights of marginalized groups, who believe in speaking out against hatred and violence and anti-Semitism. That's number one, absolutely, for sure. And I'll also leave you with the ending words of By the Rivers of Babylon, popularized as a modern-day psalm by Boney M., who sang, "May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight tonight. May the words we sing tonight, the beautiful, beautiful music of our people who were told to leave against their wills, let the words we sing and the votes we cast on Tuesday bring us a little bit of comfort and hopefully a little closer to justice." Shabbat shalom. Thank you.